Okay. Is it showing recording on your end, Dr. Stone?
It is.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and people will join in as they can, I guess. You know, we've got 20 students so far, so we'll see where.
Well, let me
But
make sure. I did send my Zoom, so.
Yeah. Well, but they shouldn't. They know it by now. I mean, so they know it's their responsibility to check it. They'll be coming in. It's probably just a busy time at school, and they're just getting in. You know, getting in. It keeps dinging, so it's like Avon calling. So on my end. But welcome to our Tuesday night Zoom class. I hope that you've had a good beginning of your school week and that things are going well where you work. I did want to say to begin by just showing you, if you'll look, as you can see on, can you see this on screen, Doctor?
Week 5, yes.
Yeah, week 5. Okay, just a reminder of you know, of your assignments this week. Again, the APSL Task 3 revisions are due to Dr. Stone and me by no later than by the end of this week, and that is to the assignment Dropbox, and that would be with our recommendations of what you would have to do to make any changes. If you had to make any changes, if you didn't have to make any changes, then you can finish up the process, you know, with meeting with your PLC, putting your meeting minutes and your agenda in there, and you know, you can go ahead and submit it into the assignment Dropbox, and we'll go ahead and grade it and tell you to move on to task 4. But just make sure that you are doing what we are asking you to do. Again, I would remind you to make sure that you're following the template, and again, use the APSL helpful hints document, because it does pretty much lay it out for you in very simplistic terms so that you can, you know, understand what you're doing. Your APSL Task 3 peer reviews will be due this week. Many of you have already done that. I would tell you to make sure that, or remind you to make sure that do not back up on the quality of these reviews. Some of you started out very, very strong with strong reviews, and I can see a little bit of backing up with it. So I would expect you to continue to give us quality reviews. This is a practice of actually, when you become an administrator, actually evaluating and working with teachers. So this is a good opportunity. So just make sure that you're giving us good reviews. If you just simply say nothing noted or just a one sentence, I mean, you're probably meeting minimal requirements for that task, but it's not something that we would want to see. So make sure that you're doing what you need to do on that end. Another reminder that your APSL Task 1 and 2 Zoom conference link will be due to the assignment Dropbox this week. That means that you should hopefully have already met as a team. You know who your Zoom master is going to be. That Zoom master will send a link out at an appointed time, and that Zoom team will meet, and you will talk about APSL Task 1 and 2 using the peer review template as a guide, but it can be anything that is related to the APSL Task 1 and 2, as long as it is good scholarly dialogue that we're hearing. Even if you need to talk about task 3 and 4 and 5, we don't care, as long as it is dealing with the APSL. Remember, whoever the Zoom master is will upload the video. They will send the recorded link to each of the team members, and each of the team members will submit that same link into the assignment Dropbox for grade. So all of you will be submitting, from that team, will be submitting the very same video. And once Dr. Stone and I look at one video from the team, we'll be able to go ahead and grade the rest of them, because all of them from that team will be the same. So again, that responsibility is due by the end of this week. So please make sure that you're making arrangements for that if you have not already done so. And then we're going to talk about task 4 tonight. And the draft of that will be due to discussion board again by this Sunday night. Dr. Stone, would you like to say anything at all relative to the assignments up to this point, task 1, 2, and 3?
Well, I did want to mention a couple of things. I truly have enjoyed what I've seen and the work that you're turning in, but I do want to reiterate something that Dr. Stebbins said, and that is for those feedback. I, like Dr. Stebbins, have seen that those are strong and powerful, not only for you to develop your skills in observing, but it's also powerful for us to make sure that you're getting the concept. So it serves really three purposes as well as for the person you're sharing it with. But don't slack up on those, because truly when you become that school principal or assistant principal, you'll be doing these all the time. I mean, you will go into a classroom and that is exactly the kinds of things that you'll be looking for in presentations and in people's work. So don't slack up on it, but the work has been good, a little slow. I think picking up the pace might be a good suggestion, but continue to reach out to us. I've had private Zoom sessions with at least 2 students so far. Look forward to doing that if you just want to have some private time. I know I can do it. Dr. Stedman does it as well. So just reach out to us, because we are here to help you be successful. That's our goal as coach as well as instructors, is to make sure that we have you ready for the next course, 603, and then the progression of courses through the MELS program. And ultimately, for that first time you sit in the administrator's seat, we want to make sure you're ready. That's something Gardner Webb prides itself on. And we have a very successful rate for that. We'll help you along the way, not only in training, but also in interviewing to get you there.
Another thing too, with Dr. Stone's class and my 3 classes, if you have not fully submitted everything for task 1 and 2, fully submitted it, that means that you're behind.
Yes.
So you need to figure out, and it's not a lot of you, but it's some of you. So if you're listening, or when you get this tape and you're listening, you need to make sure that you figure out what you're going to do to get that caught up this week, and to begin pacing yourself. Remember, one of the competencies that you're going to be evaluated on, and you'll evaluate yourself, is time management. And we talked about this the very first week, and we said that we realized that you're taking on another whole world for the next year into your life, and that your other world's not going to stop. Being a mama, being a dad, being a teacher, being whatever you are, a husband, a wife, those things are not going to stop. You're having to continue to do those things, but you're having to fit something else into your already busy schedule. But you've got to figure out how to do that. So, you know, we've been pretty lenient with understanding the first couple of weeks, but that's going to stop. That tough love is going to come in there, and Dr. Stone and I are going to say, look, we can't continue with this. If there is a personal issue, you need to communicate with us, and we will work with you. But if you're the same person that has an issue every week, then we need to have some dialogue, because Dr. Stone, you were superintendent one time, weren't you?
Oh, yeah.
And you were principal one time, weren't you?
Oh,
And
yeah.
Dr. Revis was a principal one time. I was in the superintendent's office one time. I was a principal. And, you know, we couldn't put up with these kinds of things if you were a real principal or a real assistant principal or in that world. So you've got to start practicing, you know, multitasking and making all of this fit into your schedule already, because when you do become an administrator, I promise you, there's hardly ever any free time.
Right.
Would either Dr. Stone, you or Dr. Revis
Well,
like
Dr. Stephen, I just want to add too, and I can tell you as a superintendent, I've evaluated many principals and assistant principals enough to know that time management is the thing that gets the most that I look for in people, but it's also the thing that trips people up. So you're going to have some really great time management skills, and there's no better place than starting now, because that's going to be an indication of when we sign off in the final analysis in the task stream. When we sign off, we ought to be able to comfortably say to your future employees too, that you are aware of how to manage your time and manage it wisely. I mean, really, there's so much on a principal and assistant principal's plate. If you think this course and what you're having to do and the requirements here are difficult, wait until you sit in that office, and that's when time management is going to be more important than ever. Dr. Revis?
Well, I would just like to reiterate, one of the things I love about Gardner Webb is that the projects and the tasks that you are assigned during your classwork, they're authentic projects. This APSL, you're going to be doing this as a principal. This is very authentic. And you've got like 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks to do the complete APSL. Well, friends, I will tell you as a principal, you've got to lead an entire faculty through this process in about 4 to 6 weeks. And I know it's intense, but I really, really believe that we are preparing you for that real world of work and those tasks that you're going to have to do as a principal. I met a couple weeks ago with a new principal, and she went through this program, and she told me, without a doubt, Gardner-Webb highly prepared her for what she has had to see since, for 3 months. But again, I'm just pleased that we're not asking you to do busy work. These are authentic tasks, and you will see that at some point.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Rarely.
Thank you, Dr. Revis, and thank you, Dr. Stone. And again, what we're saying to you is not meant to come across as a negative. We're just speaking to you from experience and the real world. And that's what we're supposed to do, and, you know, preparing you for that next step that you're going to take. So, you know, you know who you are. If it's you and you say, well, you know, I realize I've got to step up my game, then step up your game. And if you need to talk to us about it, and, you know, we can give you some pointers or whatever, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be glad to help you with that. But the workload is going to continue to be what it is. And remember that if with this work, you're already figuring it out. If you get behind 1 week, you can't do the next week's work. So those of you that we're going to talk about the action plan tonight, but if you have not finished task 2 and task 3, then how can you effectively do task 4 that is going to be due by the end of this week? So it's important that you keep up along the way, and you've got to figure out how to make it work. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stone at this time, and he has a presentation that he's going to make. Okay. Okay.
All right. Let me get to the right presentation. First and foremost, can everyone see my screen? I don't want to do like I did last week and a week before and keep talking and no one.
Yeah, we can see the screen, yes.
All right. I'm going to unlock this for my students, and it's called the action plan. And the reason I wanted to do this with you tonight is that you will be working through action plans, and when you become that principal in your building, action plans are important. So I wanted to do a little bit of presentation on how to develop action plans, what to look for in your action plans, and some guidance for you as you begin to have to write these for your own job.
Dr. Stone, and when you get through, don't go out of there. While you're there, I'm going to let you open up the link that I need, and you can kind of thumb through it while I'm talking.
Okay. All right. Well, let me. All right, so let's talk about the action plan, which is the key to improvement. I'm going to remove the chat. Dr. Stebbin, if you or Dr. Revis can keep up with the chat. In all of your professional life, you're going to be asked to write action plans. Through your MELS program here at Gardner-Webb, you're going to get an opportunity to really practice this. And what I like about what Dr. Revis says is we're not just doing hypotheticals. We're giving you the tools to be successful when you step into your building. There is nothing that you're going to get in the Gardner-Webb program that will not be used on year 1 when you get into that position, whether it's an assistant principal's position or whether it's the principal's. And if you go in as an assistant principal, which most of you will, the best way to move quickly through a system is to gain the attention that you're a competent person, you know exactly what you're doing, and that your learning curve is very fast, that you can pick up things, and when you bring things already with you, and the ability to write an action plan and know what needs to be in an action plan is one of those abilities and one of those skills that you need to have. So bear with me. Can everybody, first of all, thumbs up somebody. Can you see my screen? Because I don't want.
We can,
right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, so the action plan itself is a couple of steps to it. Of course, the first thing is creating your plan, and you really need to know what you want to do. Because if you're not clear about what you want to do, then you can go in many, many different directions. Your plan's going to be less effective. It's going to have so many holes in it But so the first thing is to determine what is your objective, what is it that you want specifically to do, and to decline or to define what you want to achieve. And if you do this early enough, now your plans may change, and it should be a fluid document, and it should change when the conditions impact it such that it needs to, or when you have that flexibility to adopt to new pieces of data or new bits of information that comes to it. But you really need to start with knowing what you want to do. That's the first and most critical step. So, and try to define that as early as possible. So create your plan. Then, of course, you're going to do your research. And you already have started this through MELS 601. We've asked you to look at teacher working condition surveys. We've asked you to look at report cards, and you'll continue to do these kinds of things in your MELS program. So do your research, find the data points that you need, and to bring those to the table. So if you know what you want to do and you have a narrow focus of what your action plan is about, it will help you determine what kind of data points that you do need. So do your research, do it before you get started, because once you have some research in place, once you've defined and created your plan, the next is to do the research. It is also helpful to reach out to others. There is no crime in looking at someone else's model, someone else's plan as a model. There's no crime in borrowing from other plans, as long as you understand that it doesn't necessarily, you just can't borrow and not fit your situation. So reach out to others who've got similar goals, who've already achieved those goals, and they can also be a part of that process. When you start writing plans or developing your plans, there are people that you can reach out to, mentors that you can reach out who have already written and developed their own plans, and who can tell you some points about what not to avoid or what to avoid. So do your research. Be specific and realistic in your planning. Have a specific goal about what you want from the very beginning. Be realistic. You're not going to be able to cure cancer. You're not going to be able to have 100% graduation rate. You're not going to be able to have 100% reading in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You've got to be specific about and realistic about what your plans are. So be specific. And also create those schedules, those milestones, and have an idea of what the final outcome will look like. That is your measure of success. That will tell you whether or not you need to refine, whether you need to modify. So always keep an eye on those and what your final outcome should be. Again, being specific, but also realistic. I have seen action plans as a superintendent that are wonderful. They're going to have 100% of their parents participate 100% of the time. And I'm thinking, what universe do you live in? Because that's not realistic. Now, it's a wonderful goal, and I've always heard if you don't shoot from the stars, you won't. What's that old saying? If you don't shoot for the stars, I don't know. It's something to that effect. I can't remember what it is, but the bottom line is, when you're making goals, there is nothing worse than to have a goal that at the end of the year, you're sitting there and your goal was 95%, and you've grown 5, but your score is 55. That is demoralizing. So try to have realistic goals. Try to have things that are doable.
Well, I know what you were saying. I think it's that you aim for the stars. You might not get but to the moon, but at least you're further. You're closer than you were.
That's it. But be realistic again, because nothing is more demoralizing than getting to the end of the year, getting to the end of your plan, and you have made growth, and you've made some wonderful growth, but it's not nearly where you said you wanted to be, and people aren't going to participate, I believe, if you've got unrealistic goals. So be realistic. Make it something that people can actually accomplish, and choose the best path toward getting there. Now, one of the other pieces of advice is to work backwards from your goal. Let me see if I can move this so you all can see. Make sure there's nothing up front. Well, that's not you. Hang on, guys. I'm going to move you. All right. So if you work backwards from the goal, what you can do in the planning stage is to determine where you want to be. It's determine what it is that you want the goal to be, and then to work as a team, work backwards about how you're going to accomplish that. And that will also give you a chance to have different people around the table who can maybe give you some different ideas. And the other thing I want to remind you as a principal or an assistant principal, you are not the expert. I mean, you may have taught 5th grade forever and a day, and you may be the expert on 5th grade, but you are not the expert on elementary reading, unless you are maybe perhaps the reading specialist. So you're not necessarily the expert, and just because you get appointed assistant principal or principal, it certainly doesn't make you the expert. The experts are the ones who are doing this every day. The experts are the teachers in your building who are making things happen. And that's where you reach from. So I have seen more than my share of administrators who get the administrator hat and automatically think they know it all. You don't, and that's a recipe for disaster. So other people can bring different ideas and different approaches to reaching your goal. Again, break it down to realistic steps, realizing also that you've got to stay flexible. Things happen, goals have to change, and to be smart about it. And there's the basic breakdown for what's smart: being specific, measurable, checkpoints, obtainable, relevant, timely. So if you're working backwards from that, you can kind of have a feel for how you're going. But again, welcome a lot of people to the table. You also want to set measurable milestones. Milestones are important. We may call them benchmarks, but those are important because those are sort of like mini goals that we can achieve, and we need to celebrate when we meet those milestones. They help, and if you can have them where they are obtainable, then it feels really good to obtain a milestone. And it also motivates us to continue to the next and to the next. Consider it a ladder to where you want them to go. Those are the importance of milestones. But it is important that you be able to get to them in the time that you have allocated for that. When you speak of time, don't have goals that you only look at them at the end of the year. You need to have your milestones and your time related to something where it can reasonably be done. If you make it too late, or if you put too much time between what your goals are, people are going to feel like that there's no urgency to it, that the goal is just another thing that they have to do at the end. It is also important to break large tasks into smaller ones, to more manageable chunks, and that helps as well. Having great and wonderful plans, but it's nice to have those small tasks so people can feel a sense of ownership. It also, by having more smaller and more smaller tasks, it gives you a chance to farm out some of those tasks so people can have a little bit more buy-in into the whole process. It also keeps you from being overwhelmed and feeling like we can't do this. It gives you, again, time back to those benchmarks, sort of that ladder where you can accomplish things in a reasonable time. So don't make it too big where people feel like they're overwhelmed. Make your schedules. I'm a schedule person. I like my to-do list. I like to have timelines on all of the tasks that I do. And that will be helpful, as well as to have some timelines and some lists of things that will help you reach your goals. Put timelines, again, speaking to the timelines, I'm a great believer in timelines, realizing also that timelines need to be flexible and change. If it is impossible to have this accomplished, give it a little bit more time to do that, but not a whole lot of time. So you're constantly trying to get people to step forward, to keep moving forward. One of the things that I know all of your schools has or should have, and that is a data wall or data room where you can go in and you can see the data over time. That is a tremendous visual. And for some of those who get feedback from me, you'll know I'm a visual person. Some of the feedback I've given is put a chart in here, give me something to look at, a little bit more of a visual. I love those. I love timelines. I like anything that is a visual because that's a quick go-to. And if you have a chart in your room or a data room or a data wall, again, that's very powerful that people can see the data and they own the data. It's there for them to see. Every time they walk into that room, every discussion could be related to that data wall. Now, a Gantt chart is a wonderful, I know you get it in 605, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when you get to 605, but any kind of tool you use is a great opportunity to keep that visual presentation there. It also gives people a chance to have some ownership in it. It needs to be where people can see it. If you have kids' names on it, I don't need to tell you it doesn't need to be. Obviously, if it has children's name or easily identifiable information, it certainly does not need to be in a place where kids have access to. So one of the things in one of the high schools that I had, one of the best high schools I've ever worked in as a superintendent, they had a meeting every week. They had a data wall in the NCY's operator's office, and they tracked their seniors. And they would just look at that data wall, and they had all sorts of different points of data. And their plan was that every child, or as many as, I think their goal was 95% graduation rate. And they came very close to it by tracking that data and having a visual every week that they could go to. So it's not that thing you put on your shelf, that notebook you put on your shelf, the plan notebook. You probably have it in your room. You probably got it from the district or from the central office. There's one from the central office in the media center in the principal's office. There's probably one in your office. but hopefully there's a data notebook as well. So a visual representation, that's kind of in your face, makes you own it, makes all of us own it. Mark things off, celebrate those little opportunities when things have been accomplished, mark them off. It's very satisfying. If you're like me on my to-do list, when I check off or draw through something, it feels wonderful. And it feels as if I've accomplished something, and it causes me to move on to the next item. So pace yourself by marking off things and also celebrating when you have completed that particular task. It also gives you a sense that you're in the right direction and that you are moving in the right direction. Keep a record. Records are important as you go. You know, someone should be keeping records. I know you're doing this through your evidences, and you will do it the rest of your evidences in the MELS program. But keep a record of everything you do. And as Dr. Stedman said, and I can tell you this because I also get a chance to teach 605. A lot of the things that you're doing now in 601 will come back in 605. And as long as you're keeping good data, as long as you're keeping good plans, you'll find that you'll have an opportunity to use it all in your final evidences in the MELS program. But get in the habit of keeping a record of everything. And as a principal, you'll find that to be most valuable. And the last thing in this presentation is about making a plan and sticking to that plan, is realizing that you can't stop until you have reached your final goal. That should be your ultimate purpose, is getting to that final goal. Realizing along the way that you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have opportunities, but keep your eye on the goal and making sure that your team is there as well. Some of that visual will help, but keep an eye on the final goal. Flexibility is important, though. Are there any questions for me on how to write an action plan, how to work with an action plan, or why it's important? But I will leave it with saying this, and if you have a question, please ask it. Action plans are part of a professional educator's life. And your practice that you're getting in now in MELS will well prepare you for that when you step into the office. Action plans are no better than how they're written. They're no better than how much you monitor them and how flexible they are. I've seen way too many action plans that are just really to check off a list that I've done this. They're no good unless there's something that drives you daily, that drives your staff in your plan. So any questions for me? And I'll look at chat. Dr. Stedman, if you want to.
Dr. Stone, if you would, as you come out of this, go on while you're there, go into the APSL template and materials. We've got an action plan in there. I actually want to show them.
Go into my APSL.
Move on to APSL
task and prompts.
Template and materials. It's got to be there.
There it is.
Okay.
Mine's on the bottom a little bit.
Yeah. See there, under the APSL example of a school-wide literacy action plan. Click on that. Now this is in your Blackboard shell, students. And if you come on down, this is develop. It says this is developing. It talks about what implementing a literacy plan. It basically goes through all the stages of a school-wide action plan. So there's a lot of good stuff in this as you are going to be preparing the action plan that we're going to talk about this evening. There's a lot of good stuff, a good language, some research-based material is in there. So I would advise you to take the time to read this and to look at this. It'll give you some good ideas as you are working and developing your own action plan this week. So we're not going to have time to go into all of that, Dr. Stone, but I just wanted them to know that it was there for their use. And if you will go back out, and while you're there, if you'll go to the template, the APSL template.
Okay, APSL template.
It's at the top.
Here.
Final. Yes. And if you would scroll down to to task 4.
All right.
Students, while we're going to keep this up, but now I'm going to be sharing with you information from
Am I in the right place?
yeah, and enable editing, and it'll are you there?
I'm here. I'm trying
Okay,
to.
gotcha. Okay, and just go to task 4 when it yeah. But what I want you to do is to make sure that you are, when you have your template, have your APSL helpful hints document with you side by side, because they work hand in hand together. And I'm pulling this up because this is actually the document that you will use as you are, as you are putting all of this together. Let's look at task 4. What does it say? Task 4. Now, last week we talked about, that with task 3, you did your literature review, and the literature review focused back on the problem that you identified in task 2. Then you looked at your annotated bibliography. All of those were references, resources, materials, programs, research-based programs. All of this, they were resources that you could use that would hopefully help you better understand the problem that you had identified in task 2. Now what we're going to do in task 4, you've identified what the problem is. You've looked at possible solutions to the problem based on what research is out there. Task 4 is an action plan. It's time that we attack the problem, and we've got to put a plan in place. Exactly what is it that we're going to do to try to get from point A to point B and take care of our problem. Task 4 says the candidate will lead the PLC team in the research and development of an action plan proposal. And not only are you going to do that, once you get through with it, you must present this to your administration. It's a non-negotiable. This is a must. You must present this plan to your administrative team. The instructions are, in narrative form, lead the PLC in the development of an action plan with a focus on your role as the leader, with references to the degree of collaboration, shared governance, and delegated responsibilities. The action plan is a concise and informative presentation that graphically highlights the research, data analysis, and expected outcomes, and is to be presented to the school's administrative team. Okay, now this is what you're going to do. Prompt 1, there's 2 prompts to this, so there's 2 parts. Prompt 1, and you see all of this stuff in yellow. Remember, we told you week 1 that if it's in yellow, that means you got to write something. So prompt 1, the candidate will lead the PLC in the research and development of an action plan to strategically address the most pressing need that you identified in task 2, that must include but not limited to the following. Now, this is what we're saying you have to do. There could be more if you decide that you want to, but this is what you have to do. Let's look at the first one. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 highlighted areas there. All 7 of those, they're headings. The first heading is, and you write, the importance of the action plan research, the importance of the action plan research base. Now, what you're doing there is, let me find my, here it is, okay. Prompt 1 of task 4 is the development of your action plan for your identified problem. You're first going to explain your action plan in narrative form. There are 7 headings that must be individually addressed relative to your identified problem for the action plan. I've already said that. Your first heading is the importance of the action plan research base. In this section, your narrative work will address the purpose of the action plan. What is an action plan? What is the purpose of the action plan based on what the research says? It's not according to what Dr. Stone says or Dr. Revis, Dr. Steven, Dr. Lang. What does the research say? So that means that you're going to reference something in there. The research says according to blah blah blah, an action plan is. And when you go back and look at the information that we've given you on that literacy-based action plan, there's some good language that you can pull from that, and it's okay to use that as long as you reference it. You're not looking for your opinion. Again, we're looking, what does the research say? Then you go to the next heading, alignment with student learning outcomes. Your action plan must align completely with student learning outcomes as measured by test scores, summative assessments. You are to narratively explain that alignment in this section. In other words, you're talking about improving student achievement in an identified area, because that is what you said your problem was. There's a problem in student achievement in some area at your school. Okay, in your action plan, everything that you do should align with the results, the student outcomes. It must align with, and that's going to be a test. So whatever the test or the assessment is, whatever you do must align with that. It matches. It runs parallel with each other. Then next, your heading is short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals and objectives. Again, in this, you must clearly define all goals and objectives for the action plan and provide what they are and when they're going to be implemented or measured. And I would suggest you delineate every one of them. Once you put your heading up there, what are your short-term goals? In other words, what can you, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, month, what can you realistically do to begin attacking this problem and begin seeing success immediately? Again, your short-term goals and objectives. Then it's going to take a little bit longer to do some things. What are those midterm things that you're going to be looking at? And then some things, it does take a while, and it could be because of, a program that you want, and there's some financial issues there. It could be anything. What are those long-term goals? But you must identify the short-term goals and objectives, the midterm goals and objectives, and the long-term goals and objectives. And again, everything goes back, and it's aligned with student achievement, and it's aligned with student learning outcomes. All of this builds on each other. Then next, your heading is specific activities aligned with the designated goals and objectives. You must identify all aligned activities that will be used to meet your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. In other words, you've said, okay, this is what we're going to do with your short-term, okay, specific, this is how we're going to do it. So the activities are those things, those activities, programs, whatever it is in place that's going to help you meet your short-term goals and objectives, your midterm goal and objectives, and your long-term goals and objectives. You're going to identify them. Okay, now once you've identified those things, your next heading is your indicators of success with measurement techniques. Okay, you put those programs in place, you put activities in place. How do you know they're working? You're going to put some indicators of success built into your plan all along the way that's going to measure success. It's going to show you. They're put in place on purpose. And it's kind of like you take the end of grade testing at the end of the year, but you have benchmark tests along the way. So those are indicators of success along the way, because you can look at it and it gives you a pretty good idea of, kind of where you are with things. So, and there's other ways that you can do that as well, but you're going to purposely build indicators of success that's going to, with measurement techniques, that's going to help you know that what you're implementing is actually working, or if it isn't working. And if it's not working, you go back to the table and you find out why it's not working. You you either revamp it, modify it, or whatever. And then sometimes you just have to say it's not worth it, and you get rid of it. You have to make those decisions as a team. And then the next heading is your heading is clarification of roles and responsibilities. Okay, who is going to do what, and what are they going to do? You name people. Who's going to take care of this, and what are what are they going to do? Who is going to be part of the success or the implementation of this action plan? You name those people. It could be you, the candidate. It could be fifth grade teachers. It could be the principal that looks at the, you've got to name the people and what exactly they're going to be doing. And then finally, your heading is formative and summative assessment criteria. When you look at formative assessments, you're looking at grown people. These are the adults that are working at the school and in charge of implementation of this action plan. Okay, you've put all this stuff in place. How do you know that grown people are doing what grown people are supposed to do? This is a fidelity check. It may be you that's monitoring something along the way. It may be the administration but who's going to do? How do you know that people are doing what? You can't just say, okay, have at it, and and then nobody ever goes back and checks to see that what is being done, supposed to being done is actually being done. So formative is dealing with the grown people, the big people in charge of making sure that this action plan is being implemented with fidelity. And then the summative assessments. These are our students. These are the end results of what we do. And most end results for us, well, the big end result is going to be end of grade or end of course testing at the end of the year. There may be other assessments along the way that can be considered summative assessments, and you will determine, if that applies to you, and that will become a part of your plan as well. Dr. Stone, if you'll move, do you see what's in red on the screen? It says choose to display your action plan summary in either a graphic organizer or a PERT chart. That should have been taken out. There is not an option. I want you to listen to this again. There's not an option. The graphic organizer that you see before you must be completed by everybody. This is what you're going to be using. So, and everything that you see there, where you see every one of those headings, you can't take anything out. It says specific activity, timeline, persons responsible, etc. Specific activity. You're going to list down that column. You're going to list all the specific activities that's going to be a part of your action plan. Then next, timeline. When is it going to be done? When is it going to be implemented? When should it, from this time frame to this time frame? What are we looking at as far, and this aligns with your short-term and mid-term and long-term goals as well, the timeline does. Persons responsible, we talked about that up in your narrative work. Who is going to do what? Resources needed. For that activity, what resources are going to be needed? Now, that could be human resources, it could be fiscal resources. Whatever's needed to get the activity done or the task done, then you identify it there. And then again, formative assessment method. Remember, we said formative assessment deals with the grown people, the people in charge of implementing the program. What fidelity check do you have in place to make sure that for that activity, that whoever is assigned to do what, if it's fifth grade teachers, if it's school-wide, who's going to make sure that what they're supposed to do, that they're actually doing it? Summative assessment, that's dealing with the students. What assessment method is going to be put in place to look at if the activity is actually doing what it needs to do for the students? Then your goal. What goal does that align with? That specific aligns with this goal that you've named. And then how do you know, at the end, how do you know that it did or did not work, that there was success with that. Every one of these must be fully discussed. And again, a lot of it comes from your narrative work and what you've done in the 7 topics above. A lot of it's pulled from that. But you're going to talk about it first, then you're going to visually show it in the graphic organizer. Now, we said that the PERT chart, at one time it was an option. You can do a PERT chart, but that's optional. You do not have, some people like to do these things, and it helps them understand things better. You can do the PERT chart, but it's an optional. You don't have to do it. We're not going to hold it against you if you don't do it. But the PERT chart can be done in addition to the graphic organizer that we have given out there. Dr. Stone, Dr. Revis, any questions at this point before I go any further from the students that I need to go back and readdress from what we've said with prompt number 1?
No, I think you covered it well, Danny.
Okay. Let's move on to prompt number 2. Prompt number 2, you're going to share this with your administrative team. Now, this is what you've got to do prior to everything and prompt number 1, that's dealing with the action plan, dealing with your identified problem, you know, how you're going to, when you go to your administration, you're going to have this prepared in advance of going in there, and you're going to discuss these topics very professionally with your administrative team. Now, you can put it in the form of a PowerPoint. I highly recommend that. But you and your team need to have addressed all of these areas prior to going in there. Let's look at the first one. The first one is you're going to talk to your administration about how you're going to address building efficacy. Now, some of you may not know what efficacy is yet, but you're going to research efficacy, and in narrative form, what does the research say about building efficacy among the teaching staff for improving student achievement? Now, when you go to the APTEL in just a few weeks, the APTEL has a large section on efficacy. This is beginning, you may actually refer back to this when you get to that part, but we're beginning to look at the teachers now, because, you know, the students, we want the students to succeed, but it's going to take teachers to help them get there. So with this action plan, what does the research say about getting everybody on board? How are you going to make sure that, or what strategies are you going to put in place? What are some of the things that you're going to do to try to school-wide for everybody to improve their attitudes about student learning and student engagement at your school? What does the research say? Not what Dr. Stedman says, not what Dr. Stone said. What does the research say? Then the next area, your heading is strategies for sustained growth. Again, what does the research say about moving forward in the quest for improving student achievement? What does the research say about moving forward in your quest for improving student achievement? That's all part of the action plan. It wouldn't be an action plan if there shouldn't be some positive results in the end. The next topic is issues concerning diversity. Again, and I've listed some things in my helpful hints area, but it could be more than this. Again, what are the issues as you're implementing this action plan, as you're looking at the problem in your school? What are the issues dealing with exceptional children, your ESL population, migrant education, and it could go on and on and on. You've got to look at any area of diversity that could hinder the growth process. And if it's hindering the growth process at your school, it must become a conversation with your team and with your administration, and it must become a part of the action plan because that must be addressed too if you're going to get from point A to point B successfully. Resources. What will be needed to accomplish the goals and objectives? You've talked about it up there in the in prompt 1, but again, to be able to accomplish what you're proposing, what's going to be needed? Again, this can be human and fiscal resources. If money's needed for programs, you need to talk with your administration about it. They may say, we don't have any money that we can use, but they may also say, I really like that, and with my Title I monies, we might could address that. We can do something. You never know until you ask, but you go in there with and they're going to ask you, well, how much does that program cost? You need to be able to, you go in there very prepared to answer your administration's questions. And if there's something that you don't know, you make sure that you let them know that you will come back with them with a response to that if it's something that you have not fully researched or whatever. But go in there very prepared. And then finally, your heading is establishing a shared vision of learning. What are the plans based on this action plan? What are the plans? You've discussed this with your team, and your administration is going to enhance this when you present them with what you have talked about as a team. What are the plans for getting everybody on board and everybody moving in the same direction, pulling in the same direction to help, again, get from point A to point B? You've got to establish a shared vision of learning, and this action plan is going to be a part of addressing that. And then finally, you will have your reference section, and then you will have your appendices, following that based on, what needs to go in there. You wrap your head around it. Again, this one is one that you don't need to be doing by yourself. It's one that you need to fully implement, or pull in the resources of your team that you have picked to be able to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Dr. Lamb, I see that you're with us. Can you hear me? Okay, unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you. Good
Okay.
job.
What would you like to add to what I have said?
Well, two things. Efficacy. Efficacy is, I always think of it as effectiveness.
Yes.
So don't let the actual term, if you're not familiar with it, throw you. What we're talking about is how do you build effectiveness? And how do you build a culture of continuous improvement where you're always working and the system that we've taught you through doing the app sale, where you do your data, where you do your data analysis, where you do your literature review, out of your literature review on your problem, your annotated bibliography on your solution. That's a continuous improvement model.
Right.
Because you've got new data every year and you find new areas that you need to work on and improve in. That's a continuous improvement. But the whole idea here is efficacy, to be effective in what we do. And that's the bottom line, is you get results. That's why when I have you next semester in 603, when we start looking at building a master schedule, I had you do an audit of your internal context of your school. I'm amazed at how many of our students don't include their test scores, their data. That's the heart of the internal context of your school. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do? We teach kids, and we keep the score. And that's what effectiveness means. We're trying to improve that score. The scores, the outcomes, what students achieve matter. That's the heart of the evidences that you're doing this semester, is you're trying to be more effective in your school. And so don't, I guess my point is, don't gloss over task prompt 2. Make sure that you address it thoroughly, that this is the process that we're doing. This is what we did to get there. This is how we are sure that we're being effective educators, that children are learning, and that we're in a continuous. So a lot of the language that we've used during the app cell is how you will actually write that prompt. That prompt 2 is the language, the things that you've heard us say. This the reason why we're doing these things. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is this. I get this question all the time. What happens if our school says we don't have the money or we can't do this? Again, the learning is in the process. We'd like for you to develop, hopefully you've developed some programs that some of your schools will run. If they're reasonable, it doesn't cost $1 million. If there's only a few dollars involved, hopefully they'll let you run them, because that's another whole learning cycle for you. But there's no penalty, or there's no requirement that when you present. The requirement is that you present what you've done, and that you can present a professional presentation, and that you can talk data and numbers and student achievement, because that's what people want to hear nowadays. Because this is really, really, really good practice for when you're applying for a job. Because a lot of times what they do now in the early stages of the job interview process is they give you a data set and ask you to do exactly what we've done in the app cell. And they want to be able to hear you talk data and plans and improvement and the process. They want to know that you know the process. This is your first, this is the first time, this is your first experience where you are actually in a job interview setting, where you're able to sit in front of other professionals and convince them that you know what you're doing educationally, that you could actually lead a team, lead a school. This is the best practice that you will get in this program, in terms of being able to sit down or stand up and convince a group of adults that you could actually lead a school. This is your first. So as Dr. Stedman said, put some time and effort in it. Make it professional. PowerPoint, Google Docs. This is a professional presentation. And whether or not they adopt your plan and run your plan is not the important part. The important part is that you made the plan and learned how to do it, and that you've made a presentation in front of adults that's cogent, that's professional, that's polished, and that's great practice for when you have to do this when you're looking for a job.
And Dr. Lamb, also those of you from South Carolina, this is excellent practice for the praxis that you're going to have to take as well. Our students that have already taken it from South Carolina have commented many, many times about what we're talking about right now, how much this helped them in that area on their praxis.
Because the reason it's tested is because it's important.
Right.
It's the heart of what we do. If they hire you to make a good number go up or a bad number go down. It's just that simple. They have to believe that you can make a good number go up or a bad number go down. Now this semester it's all about making good numbers go up. Next semester we're going to talk about making bad numbers go down. And there are bad numbers in our business, and there are sanctions just as severe as low performing academically. The sanctions are just as great if your bad numbers are too high. So you've got to convince people that you can make a good number go up, and that's what we're doing this semester. Next semester is part of convincing them that you can make a bad number go down.
That's right. Okay. Remember, we do not have a session on this Thursday night. You've got a lot to do, so we're giving you this time, to use your time wisely and to work on work that you need to work on. And, maybe get with your team to get your Zoom videos done. So we're not coming online with you this Thursday night, but if you need us, reach out to us. And with that in mind, Dr. Revis, can you hear me, Dr. Revis?
I sure can.
Dr. Revis is going to bring the benediction this time.
All right.
Okay, well, as a former assistant superintendent in a school district, one of the things that I worked with predominantly was the continuous school improvement process. And I can promise you the process that we've talked about here today, or for the past 4 weeks, is the process that most school districts have to live and die by in this age of accountability. But the one thing that most principals struggle with is what Dr. Stedman talked about in your prompt 2, and that is establishing a shared vision. How do you get that buy-in? How do you lead a group of people who are very diverse and follow that plan that your school improvement team has decided that they're going to adopt? That's the tough thing. And I think that's the kind of thing and questions that you're going to be asking in an interview. I know in interviewing principals, we always ask things about leadership because that's what it's all about. How do you get people to catch your vision? Now, Dr. Stedman also talked about fidelity monitoring, and yes, you have to do that. And I do believe in strong feedback. The research is out there quite a bit about how much more students can learn when you give them timely, appropriate feedback. I truly believe that adults will do the same thing. When you give them appropriate, timely feedback on their teaching. And you have to look at yourself as you're not just trying to play a gotcha when you're monitoring. You're trying to help your staff grow and improve. It's all about continuous improvement. So again, as you're working through this last task, think about, how can I really get a group of people to follow this plan? Because that's really the crux of the leadership.
Okay. Dr. Revis, thank you so much. Dr. Stone, did you have anything in closing?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. Everybody have a good week.
Listen,
Good week.
Dr. Lamb, we'll be talking. Good night, everybody, and you'll get your video later on this evening when I can get it processed.
Thank you.
Have a good night, and I look forward to seeing your plans at the end of the week.
All right.